גבירותיי ורבותיי, כבוד נשיא המדינה, מר ראובן רובי ריבלין, הגברת נחמה ריבלין וראש הממשלה ושר החוץ מר בנימין נתניהו והגברת שרה נתניהו. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency, Mr. Reuven Ruby Rivlin, President of the State of Israel, Mrs. Nechama Rivlin, and His Excellency, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel, and Mrs. Sarah Netanyahu.
God bless all of you.
אנא תפסו את מקומותיכם, will you please kindly take your seats. אני מתכבדת להזמין את כבוד ראש הממשלה ושר החוץ מר בנימין נתניהו לשאת דברים. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to invite His Excellency, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel, to deliver his address.
President Rivlin and Mrs. Rivlin, distinguished diplomats from around the world, friends, this is a special celebration because we are marking here not only the 70th anniversary of the birth of the State of Israel, but 70 years of the rebirth of the Jewish people, because the Jewish people nearly died. We are 4,000 years old. For roughly half that period, we were a vibrant people here on this land, on these hills. We had come out of bondage in Egypt, led by Moses. We formed here a kingdom under King David. We wrote a book of immortal values, the Bible, and forged values for all of mankind, that all people were equal under God. This is the source of the idea of freedom. It was forged here, in this city by our great prophets. And though we stood on the crossroads of many empires, we were able to cling to our land for roughly 2,000 years. Sometimes we lost, but we never stopped fighting for our independence and our values. We did so with great spiritual leaders, unmatched in the history of mankind, Isaiah, Jeremiah, others, and did so with a succession of heroes that all of mankind knows: Joshua, Gideon, Samson, David, the Maccabees. For roughly 2,000 years, the Jewish people had an amazing capacity to resist the assaults on our survival, on our culture, on our values. Then we lost our land. And when we lost our land, we were gradually stripped of the capacity to defend ourselves. We were thrown into 100 exiles. We couldn't even complain about the loss of our capacity to defend ourselves. Gradually, we became absolutely defenseless, like a wind-tossed leaf. And the idea of the Jew changed in that exile. It became a catchword, an analogy for pity or for derision: the wandering Jew, the helpless Jew. And with this powerlessness also came destruction at a growing pace, exiles, pogroms, and eventually the greatest program of them all, the Holocaust. It is because half a century before the Holocaust, and perhaps 2 decades before that, that a new movement began, the movement of modern Zionism and proto-Zionism before it, that we are here today. A new Moses was born for the Jewish people, Theodor Herzl. He said that the only way that the Jewish people could assure its future is to come back to its ancient homeland and reconstitute its own independent state, as of yesteryear. He was considered mad, primarily by his own people first. But he was able to convince the great masses of Jews, especially the poor Jews of Eastern Europe. And he started a movement. He worked only 8 years. 8 years. From 1896 to 1904. He started at the age of 36 and was dead by 44, but his movement lived. My grandfather was captivated by Herzl. He opposed him bitterly on the idea of Uganda. Uganda was not something that Herzl wanted. He saw it as a way station because he foresaw the Holocaust, and he wanted to extricate the Jews from the cauldron of Europe and to give them a safe haven, at least momentarily. My grandfather opposed that, but he, like so many others, was inflamed by this idea of a new Jewish state. And because there had been Jewish communities, Jewish farms, Jewish industries that had been formed here from 1880 till 1948, we already had a base after the Holocaust to build this state. But if we had not built this state, at that crucial stitch of time, that crucial stitch of history, then it's not only that Israel would not have been formed, it's that the whole future of the Jewish people would have been in doubt. But we did. If you had been here 70 years ago, you would have seen 7 Arab armies encircling this tiny Jewish state. You would have seen 600,000 people clinging to a narrow seashore, and those armies trying to push them into the sea. But somehow we prevailed. With the rekindled spirit of the Maccabees, we prevailed. And from that beachhead, we built a marvelous state. What a difference 70 years makes. We've built a powerful army. There are some think tanks in Washington who rank us 8th in the world. I think that's preposterous, but it's okay. We won't argue. We've built an amazing economy. That took some time. Well, you know, there was an old joke. How do you make a big fortune? Small fortune in Israel. You start with a big fortune. You remember that? Well, no longer. Big fortunes are made in Israel because, you know, I ask myself this question. How can it be that the Jewish people are pretty successful in most other countries, but they weren't successful in business here? Well, one possibility was that we got all the lemons and everybody else got the good ones. But that was completely contradicted by the fact that when Israelis went abroad, some of them did remarkably well. So it wasn't the lemons, it was the lemon system that we had here. Well, starting out, we had to have a lot of government control, intervention. It couldn't be any other way. But after about a decade or two, we had to let go, and we didn't. So we finally did let go. And we installed here a free economy. And we unleashed here these amazing forces that the president referred to. Autonomous vehicles. You use Waze? Israel. You use Disc on Key? Israel. Yeah, cherry tomatoes in your salad? Israel. Wonder drugs? Israel. Every field, water everywhere? Israel. Agriculture that is amazing, precision. You know what precision agriculture is? Yeah? You have drones in the sky, sensors on the ground, an artificial intelligence database, and you fertilize and water the individual plant Not the field, the plant. That's a revolution. A revolution everywhere. I see it in India, I see it in China, I see it in Africa, in Latin America, everywhere. So Israel has developed these two capacities that we lacked. The capacity to defend ourselves and the capacity to, with a tremendous military and intelligence service, and the capacity to innovate. And the future belongs to those who innovate. And Israel now is, that embryonic nation of 70 years ago is today the innovation nation. And these two powers have created immense interest in all the countries of the world, because everyone needs protection against terrorism, this disease that is around us, that sends its viruses everywhere. And Israel has helped so many countries, including most recently in preventing the downing of a Boeing aircraft, a civilian airliner from Australia to the Gulf, and so many other places, dozens and dozens of terrorist attacks in dozens of countries that our intelligence services have helped foil these terrorist activities that could unleash massive destruction. All countries need that, so they come to Israel. And all countries need innovation, so they come to Israel. And we welcome you. We want you to bring as many of your countrymen, countrywomen as you can here. We embrace that. I think that when I entered the Foreign Service as Israel's deputy ambassador in Washington in 1982, I think we had about 80 countries with whom we had diplomatic relations. That number has doubled. There's not much left, and I can tell you, with the exception of Iran and one or two other countries, we do have relations with everyone else, with the few dozen that are left. So Israel's technological prowess and its security prowess has given us diplomatic prowess, but it's given us something else. It's given us peace. Power has given us peace. Because as long as we were considered something that is ephemeral, that could be driven into the Mediterranean, there was no peace. But after a succession of tragic wars, some of our neighbors gradually began to understand that we are here to stay. And once they understood that Israel is a permanent fixture of the Middle East, we could make peace. We made peace with Egypt. We made peace with Jordan. And I can tell you that I'm optimistic about the future of peace, because I see the appreciation of Israel today in many Arab countries. Many Arab countries were taking not only a realistic, but a realistic and positive view of Israel. We run polls on the internet, in the foreign ministry. You may not know this, but I am the foreign minister. And I periodically meet with our Director General, whom you know, Yuval Lotin. And he conducts polls in the Arab world on the internet. And when you ask the Arab countries, do you think it's worthwhile for your country to have relations with Israel, the numbers are staggering. And they're very different from what they were a decade ago, or even 5 years ago. It's changed. Now, admittedly, a lot of that has changed because we face a common enemy, which is Iran. But a lot of it is also changing because people want a better life. They want water, they want agriculture, they want energy, clean energy. They want medicine and health. Israel. Power, technology, and innovation are the key to peace. It will take time because our immediate neighbors have not yet understood that Israel is here to stay, and they still cling to the fantasy that somehow we'll be driven into the sea. But that's not true of all of them. And right now I would say it's not even true of most of them in the Middle East. It's a great change. It portends hope. I have hope, and I intend to pursue peace. it is something that I want to do with you. There are two things that you can do to help Israel celebrate this great Independence Day. The first thing is speak out against Iran. Iran is the enemy of us all, of Israel, the Arab world, civilization. It openly speaks today, 2018, the 21st century, it openly speaks about liquidating Israel, openly. It encircles the whole Middle East, which it wants to conquer. It fires rockets into Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. It is occupying Lebanon effectively. It's trying to inflame Gaza again. It is in Iraq. And it is trying to establish a military base in Syria, which all peace-loving nations should resist. Speak out against Iraq. If history has taught us anything, it is that a murderous tyranny must be opposed in the beginning. Stop bad things in the beginning. Iran's land empire should not take place, not only because of us, but because of our Arab neighbors and because of the cause of peace. The second thing you can do to advance peace is to move your embassy here. We are delighted with President Trump's decision to move the embassy here. It says a simple thing. Peace must be based on truth. There are many things that we have to work out in a peace agreement with the Palestinians. But it's clear under any possible arrangement that this is the president's house in Jerusalem. Not very far from here is the prime minister's house and its office in Jerusalem and the seat of our government in Jerusalem. And it's going to be that way. Recognizing reality is the way you build peace. You cannot build peace on a foundation of lies because it crashes on the rocks of reality. It's important to establish those principles that will ultimately guide peace. That Israel has a capital, that the Jewish people have had a capital for 3,000 years, and that it is called Jerusalem is uncontestable. It's time to recognize that fact. We are now talking. Thank you. I'm delighted to say that there are at least half a dozen countries that are now seriously discussing with us moving their embassy to Jerusalem. And thank you, Guatemala, for doing that. There will be others to follow. So please, there's a simple principle. You're familiar with it. First come, first served. I've decided that the first 10 embassies to come here will get preferential treatment. We'll help you. All of you should do that. And I want to say how delighted we are here to see you at the President's house in our capital, Jerusalem, on this day. But we want to see you every day. So this year in Jerusalem, thank you for coming here. Thank you for celebrating our independence and our rebirth here in the Jewish state. Thank you all. Thank you.
תודה לך, כבוד ראש הממשלה. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Let the audience, thank you.
Thank you very much. With the military attachés, please take back